think what we will do first is open up the floor to anyone who would like to make a comment, ask questions, et cetera, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the budget proposal for this year. So anyone who would like to take the floor, the podium is open and available.
Morning.
Morning. Hello, Tom.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm going to keep my comments brief, mainly because I didn't have a lot of time to go ahead and go through the document since I only got it at about 6 o'clock last night. So I did do some looking at it, and I am my comments yesterday regarding how well you did last year in regards in holding the line on expenses. I was disappointed that we have the budget deficit that we do again this year. If you look at just the operating funds and the discretionary funds, and you eliminate all the inter-account transfers, you're looking at a budget deficit of almost $900,000. I know you had a target level that you were looking at, hopefully to step down to around $500,000 after last year's budget deficit of about 1.1 or $1.2 million. I know you have some increases with health insurance costs, but I was hoping to see a lower number than that, and I'm a little disappointed. I know you trimmed quite a bit because the initial request that you had were about $2.8 million, and you were able to scale that back quite a bit. But with revenue being flat, again, having expenses where they are, that's going to cause reserves to go ahead and fall further, and without really adding to reserves at all last year in the operating funds and in the discretionary funds. I'm concerned with the trend that we're going, that we're not reducing the deficit enough, and as we continue to have deficit spending and continue to draw on reserves year after year, that's a dangerous trend. And that's the only comments that I'm going to go ahead and make.
Let me ask you one question. You make a comment about the transfers, and you come up with a 900 figure. Would you run me through that calculation, please?
Sure. Okay. If you look at the operating funds.
Correct.
Okay. And if you eliminate all the incoming and outgoing transfers in the budget document that I had, you come up with operating funds having a deficit of $388,656, and you end up with discretionary funds having a deficit of $508,425, and those two together shows a over budget of $897,081, with budgeted revenue being $14.4 million and budgeted expense being $15.3 million.
Tell me why you take the transfers out.
Because the transfers are inter-account to inter-account. Okay, it's really not revenue. You're just shifting money from one account to another. So the analysis by eliminating the transfers is actual revenue that you have coming in, and if you treat the transfers as expenses, that's not actually money that you're expending. It gets counted twice. It counts once when you take it out. Let's say you transfer money from general revenue to law enforcement. Okay, if you treat that as an expense, that's really not an expense. You're just transferring surplus funds from one account to the other account, and then it's treated as an actual expenditure when the law enforcement trust account spends that money. If you count the transfers and revenues as income and expenses, then it gets counted twice. And by eliminating all the transfers, then you're looking at the actual dollars that you're receiving in, not transfers of surplus monies and the actual expenditures. So it's based on actual income and actual expenses, if you eliminate all the transfers.
If we eliminate them as revenue, don't we henceforth have to eliminate them as expenses too?
Yes, and in the analysis that I did, that was done. When you transfer money from one account to another, okay, it's not included as an expense from the account that it's
Okay.
coming out of, and it's not included as income to the account that it's coming into.
So if I have a $500,000 transfer that pays $500,000 worth of expenses, that's a wash transaction then, correct?
It is, when you look at it that way, okay?
Okay.
And the only time it's counted then is the account that it's transferred into, when those monies are actually spent, okay, for salary or maintenance and repair or materials or whatever they do. Then it only gets counted once, and it doesn't get counted twice.
But if it's a wash transaction, how do you get a different number than what we get for what we're showing as our we have a deficit of $168,000 for our operating funds. How do you get a different number?
By eliminating the transfers, because the budget document that I looked at included transfers coming into accounts as income and transfers going out to accounts as expenses. Okay, and by eliminating those, you get down to the pure amounts of income coming in and expenses going out.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's all I've got to say.
Okay, anyone else?
Could we reserve to maybe say something after you go through the budget?
Oh, yeah, we'll have
Okay.
that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to our packet here, and we're going to kind of go out of order. I want to talk about last year before we talk about this year. It's labeled 2011 recap. Pay particular attention to the accounts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. Those are the operating funds that the commission has, some say so, over how the money is spent. There's a great deal of these that are just pass-through accounts, the hospital funds and things of that nature. I just want to point out a couple things. In 2011, general revenue operated, I don't have last year's figure in front of me, so I'm working from memory. We budgeted, our worst case scenario was a $545,000 deficit. We in fact operated at a $130,000 surplus. Road and Bridge was expected to operate at somewhat of a surplus. They operated at a $438,000 surplus. The Law Enforcement Trust was $190,000 in the hole. Assessment was $52,000 in the black. The 911 fund was $60,000 in the hole. So if you'll turn to the back page, very bottom, this is every penny that came into this county and went out in one direction or another. We began the year with $5,948,180.30 in the budget. We had revenue, we had expenses, and for the year, we expected to operate at a $1.1 million deficit. We operated at a $119,963.08 surplus. So, Tom, I believe you said something about not building reserves. We in fact did add $120,000 to the reserves. Not a significant amount, but there are 114 counties in the state of Missouri, and we could fit every county commissioner in this room who is sitting here talking about black ink. There are counties whose reserves are going down $2 million at a pop. We stayed even, slightly better. Okay, I have a couple questions about the, unless anyone has any comments about the 2011 performance, because I know there's a lot of rumblings and grumblings that our reserves are depleted, that we burned through a whole bunch of money, but the actual true number is we operated in the black to the tune of $120,000. Anybody have any comments about 2011?
If you don't mind, my only question here is, it shows I got $190,000 in the red, that's income only, but I actually operate it within my budget, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
Okay. To the tune of about 98,000, I thought.
right,
Okay.
right. Anyone else? John?
So if the sheriff operated within his budget and you take revenues received versus what was his budget, how much did we have to dip out of general revenue to cover the difference?
Would you get about $700,000 worth of transfers?
Yeah, I believe it was right at 280,000 or something is what we did.
In line 52, the jail improvement fund, that we took $398,000 out of that.
Yes.
A little more than, about 398 and a half. That's a fund that doesn't regenerate, that once that fund's gone, it's gone.
I'm aware of the
Right.
ramifications of that.
We're using that for lighting and stuff like that too?
That's the purpose of that tax,
Oh, that was for the upkeep and maintenance?
is keep the jail going, and we have to have lights on.
But when we deplete, about 25%, well, not quite 25% of the 1,300,000, leaving $972,000, I mean, at that rate of spending of 398, we've got about 2 or 3 more years where that fund's gone.
Really? I didn't realize that, John.
Well, so if you want to say that we're
Do you have
100,
anything constructive to add to this conversation?
yeah, I
John?
do, and
Tell me something I don't know.
if you would excuse me a minute to say that we have $170-something thousand in the surplus when we're dipping into funds that are going to be non-existent in a few years, maybe we should look at, including those into the figures and showing that we are deficit spending in the county.
If we're deficit spending, we would have less money than we started with.
We do have less money than we started with.
No, we don't. Look at the bottom line, John.
No, I am. I'm looking at all the negative brackets and I'm seeing
Look at the bottom
negative
line.
numbers.
Bottom line is we made more money than we added to our reserves.
For the record, $398,000 came out of the jail improvement fund. And before that, there was $1,371,000. When the $972,000 is gone, it's gone.
Right.
So when we balance the budget or spend money that we, at that rate, pretty soon we're gonna be buying candles because we're using it at the jail to power the lights. I mean, and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. When you're dipping into funds that at that rate, you're deficit spending. I mean, point blank. I mean, there's
That fund is deficit spending.
okay. Well, then the county's deficit spending because that fund's part of the county.
Interesting way to look at things, but our bank account is larger now than it was at the beginning of the year. And that's not indicative of deficit spending. It's indicative of the fact that the other elected officials, everybody sitting in this room that was elected, was given a budget, and they spent less than what they were allotted, which allowed us to build up our general revenue a little bit. And in the aggregate, bottom line, we made money.
Well, that remains to be seen.
What do you mean it remains to be seen?
Well-
119,963.08. What's negative about that?
Remains to be seen. We're independent auditor come in and look at it. And that'll happen this year, right?
Right? Anyone else? Okay, our 2012 budget. Still in your packet. I just have a couple things that I want to clarify. Probably the clerk and the auditor can help me on this. In the road and bridge section of the budget, I want to make sure that we are not presenting the income in a confusing fashion and maybe counting something twice. On the chart that is in the packet here, I think that those numbers are correct. I just want to make sure that everyone understands in the total road and bridge revenue, that's the one, and you guys don't have this in your packet, but